Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, Opie recounts his relationship with a girlfriend who was emotionally turbulent and became fixated on contacting her deceased brother. During a seance with a medium, he becomes skeptical and leaves briefly, only to return and find the medium exiting the girlfriend's bedroom. Confronted with infidelity, he breaks up with her. Later, she claims pregnancy, but he knows it's not his. With support from a friend, they cut ties with her, leaving her pregnant and alone. Now let's get into the story. My girlfriend was an emotional roller coaster. She was so spontaneous and crazy. Looking back now, I know she didn't have any idea who she was or who she wanted to be. The thing that she was most fascinated by at the time was life after death and the power of love and detachment that we can barely understand. So when her brother unexpectedly died at this time in her life, she was grieving pretty hard and hoped she'd be able to contact him through a medium. We were dating for 1.5 years at this point, so I was serious about her, but I wasn't sure what cue I needed to know. It was time to propose. We were both 21 years old. We each had a place with our own roommates. I didn't know how to respond to her newfound hope, so I just supported her. We had a seance at her apartment with the male medium and one of her female roommates. I was kind of surprised the medium was a man, and it made me a little uncomfortable because he was like a handsome god that could communicate with spirits in another realm. I don't know how he pulled this off with so much masculinity. I was trying not to be impressed. But then I remembered he could just be a grown man playing dress-up, and I felt a little better about myself. My girlfriend, though, was totally infatuated. She had a real belief in the possibility of communicating with her little brother, and she needed this man to connect her. She held his hand like it was life or death and looked into his eyes like she wanted them to suck in her soul. My girlfriend's roommate Lily looked amused at my girlfriend's behavior, but not convinced by this guy. I appreciated her skepticism. During the seance, friend leaped up, still holding AP's hand, and said she heard her little brother. She kept her eyes shut, her directions while she yelled out to him. Lily and I were silent. AP played along with my girlfriend, calling out to her brother by name and making her cry. I was rolling my eyes. He noticed my skepticism and called me out, telling me to keep my eyes shut, to keep the realm portal open. I said I'd like to watch, and my girlfriend freaked out. She said I was keeping her from talking to her brother, and if I wasn't going to respect her wishes, I should leave. Well, I had enough. I didn't like this guy, but I didn't want to bum her out about her brother. I went home for about an hour, but then Lily texted me. She said normally she didn't want to get into other people's business, but she still had my number as an emergency contact from my girlfriend, and she wanted to tell me that the medium was still at their place. But they moved the seance into my girlfriend's bedroom. My girlfriend and I didn't get to have intimate very much. Partially to avoid unwanted pregnancy, and partially because our roommates were very nosy. So it made me really upset that she actually let this guy in her room when I hardly even got in there. I rushed back over, but by the time I got there, Lily had left. My girlfriend's door was locked, and the room was quiet. I knocked, and my girlfriend said, "Yes, we're getting dressed." Leslie, and that's when she opened the door and saw it was me. AP was standing behind my girlfriend, pleased that I didn't return until after he got some action. I immediately asked why they were getting dressed. My girlfriend was speechless. She looked scared and swallowed hard. She tried to think of what to say. AP thanked her for a great time and left, avoiding my gaze. She was smiling so hard at him, and she looked at me defiantly, like she wondered if she could get away with this. I told her she was stupid for sleeping with AP and believing in this speaking with the dead crap. I told her I was sorry for her loss, but it was extremely unlikely she was going to contact her little brother by taking AP's service package. Her mouth dropped and said she didn't mean to upset me. She just wanted to contact her brother one more time. I told her I knew what she was doing and it wasn't going to work on me. I broke up with her. She looked extremely upset, but like she was covering it with a mask. She kicked me out and I didn't hear from her for 6 hours. Then she called me to grieve over her loss and the situation I put her in. She said her roommate hated her now and she didn't do anything wrong, so now she was trying to say she didn't sleep with him. I thought of Laylee and hung up on my ex to call her. She answered it quietly and I asked her why she wasn't there. When I got there, she said they were having intimate so loudly it pissed her off. She tried to knock and yell through the door that she shouldn't be doing this to me, but my girlfriend only told her to mind her own business. I thanked her for trying to intervene and for telling me the truth, because now I knew she wasn't planning on being honest. Just then I heard my ex in the background accusing Lily of backstabbing her, and they got into a huge fight. After they got into a fight, I ended up allowing Ellie to stay at my place. For weeks later, my ex had been calling both of us constantly and showed up at the apartment 4 times, but we never answered her. Then she left a voicemail on my phone telling me she was pregnant. It was the finest karma I ever heard. I knew it wasn't my child because we didn't do anything for weeks before she cheated. I texted her to wish her luck, but said I would not be involved with her or the affair child ever again. Lily took this time to tell her she was no longer her roommate either. Without Lily paying her portion of the rent, my ex lost her place to live and the people in her life. She was left pregnant and alone at the age of 21. It was hard for her to find a job and daycare after she had the baby, but I only know this because of her Facebook status. I feel so relieved that she did this before I proposed. Today's second story. In this story, a couple meets during flight training, bonding over their shared passion for aviation. However, their marriage crumbles when the wife cheats on her husband during a layover in Ireland. She leaves him for another man and eventually moves back to the US, only to find herself abandoned by her family and in dire straits. Despite pleading for reconciliation, the husband moves on with his life, leaving her behind. Now let's get into the story. I, 26, met my wife, 33, at our flight training school. I could tell right away that she was extremely intelligent and articulate. After she found out she was unable to have children, her first marriage fell apart. Since she was a child, she dreamed she could fly like a superhero. She could see the treetops below her and pretty accurate sky views of the area she lived, but also places around the world she'd never been to. To her, these dreams became a message from fate that she was destined to become an international pilot. Long hours, adventure, and most importantly, flying were her dream. At the age of 26, I was in flight training. After getting a bachelor's in transportation. You may be surprised, but by this time I had already thought very much about whether or not I wanted to have children someday. I was honestly leaning towards no, so I chose a career in travel to emphasize my point. When we started dating and learning all about each other, I suddenly felt like she was my ideal spouse. I thought she was a very unique woman for pursuing this career. We graduated at the same time and got hired at the same airline. I was the happiest I'd ever been. On our wedding day, we bought a home in Maryland and began our flight careers. We never flew together, but we were lucky enough to be on the same schedule most of the time. Sometimes we had 4-day-long trips with hotel stays in different states. When we flew internationally, we could spend anywhere from an hour to 24 hours in a different country. Much of our communication was through cell phone towers across thousands of miles. Time spent together in our Maryland home was what I lived for. Don't get me wrong, I love traveling, but I looked forward to the time I got to snuggle up with my wife on the couch. You can imagine my dismay and disbelief when she started to distance herself from me while we were both home. She didn't want to say much to me or be very close. She just got back from a 4-day-long trip that was only supposed to be 2 days. I expected us to be intimate, so I asked her what was going on, why she was being distant, and what happened on her trip. I knew her flight back to the US from Ireland was delayed due to a severe snowstorm, and she was put up in a hotel. What I didn't know, and she now told me, was that she was bored. so she went to an Irish pub. Apparently, she was texting me a little throughout this time, but I was too busy to think she was up to something. A brightly red-haired fellow with a heavy accent greeted her in a very kind and gentlemanly way. While she told me this story, she was extremely uncomfortable. She kept fidgeting and at some point started pacing. I was holding my breath. She started crying uncontrollably when she said she fell for him immediately. She broke down even more as she explained that while she was there, she felt like a totally different person, a woman longing for adventure without anything stopping her. I asked in a soft whisper, "Not even your husband?" Her head dropped and she sat down. She said now that she was home, she regretted her decision to go with him and see his lakeside house. I prodded her for more until she said out loud that they had intimate. Immediately after admitting this, she apologized over and swore she would never do this to me again. I was in shock. Even though I knew what was coming, I was shocked that she did this to us. It felt like we just bought our house the day before. It felt like our life together was just beginning. Our 4th anniversary was coming up, but she just destroyed everything we started together. I was devastated, stated I knew I could never trust her again, and at any time she had a layover or randomly felt like it, she could cheat on me. Chances are she wouldn't tell me next time it happened. I felt taken advantage of. I didn't want to come home to her ever again. I knew she didn't feel like I was worthy of her commitment and loyalty. Adventure and feeling like a different person were more tempting. I told her all of this, and then to get out. She tried arguing, but long story short, she only took a little bit to her parents and stayed the night. She kept coming back, and I had to keep throwing her out like a boomerang while she flew planes. Her dad got her stuff from the house, and I filed for divorce before the divorce was final. Probably just about 3 months later, she lost her mind. She arranged for another pilot to take her in a small airplane to Ireland. She had no plans to return or resign from her job, where she only worked for 3.5 years. The worst part was that she didn't tell her parents anything. They were devastated when they found out. They pretty much disowned her, and our divorce was finalized without me having to give her alimony. She made sure to burn all the bridges she had in the US before leaving, which is a shame because she wanted to come back. Just 1 year later, she left a voicemail for me, and I could tell she was crying. She said she felt like she didn't belong in Ireland after all. It was strange and cold and hard to get a job. AP started mistreating her before he kicked her out. She didn't say if it was because she cheated on him. The point was, she suddenly felt like she belonged back in her Maryland home at the last minute. She added that she missed me, loved me, and needed me to call her back. She must have thought I was a dumb fool to believe this. She just needed a place to stay in the US. But her parents wouldn't allow her to live with them or even answer her calls. Too bad I missed that phone call and all her future phone calls because I was on a date, flying plane, or happily moving on with my life.